I call this meeting to order at 1:00 p.m. Emily Feister has graciously agreed to call roll.
Dave Barry.
Here.
Sue Busenberg. Here. Michael Campbell.
Here.
Hallie Cox. Here. Selena Gomez-Belois. Gwen Gregory.
Here.
Percy Harris.
Here.
Diane Hollister. We see you.
Can't hear you.
We see you, Diane.
Sarah McCone Chase.
Here.
Paul Mills.
Here.
Jenna Nemec-Louise. I forgot how to say it. Louisi.
Here.
Scott Poynton.
Here.
Dee Runnels. Nadia Sheikh. Tom Stagg.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Emily. All right, we're moving on to recognition of guests and announcements, and we will do guest introductions and public comments by site. So why don't we start here in Burr Ridge for guests?
Cindy Palmisano, Rails.
Ryan Hebel, Rails. Joe Philippek, Rails.
Deirdre Brennan, Rails.
Jim Krieger, Rails. Dan Boston, Rails.
Amy De La Fuente, Rails.
Monica Harris, Rails.
Emily Feister, Rails.
All right, any public comment here in Burr Ridge? No, looking like no public comment in Burr Ridge. Do we have any guests in East Peoria?
Kendall was in and out. He'll be in shortly.
We're not-
Any public comment in East Peoria while we're there?
No.
All right, thank you. We're moving on to Springfield. Hello, Springfield.
Hello, this is Gwen Harrison.
Hi, Gwen.
Okay,
Any public comment in Springfield?
not right now.
Okay, thank you. Diane, is your volume working correctly now?
I can hear you, but I don't know. Can you
Yes.
hear me?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
yay, we can
can
hear
now?
you.
Okay, thank you.
Do
Good.
you have any guests in that room with you? And
No,
if
I'm
so,
all
do they have any
alone.
public comment? Okay. All right, and just as another check, I think we've covered all our sites. Is there anyone on Zoom? Any guests on Zoom would like to introduce themselves? And sounds like no. If you're probably going to have public comment if you're not there. All right. So we are moving on to agenda item number 5, adoption of the agenda. May I have a motion and a second for adoption of the agenda as presented?
So moved.
All right, we had Dave and Jenna for a second. Thank you, Jenna. Any comments, additions to corrections to the agenda? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The agenda is adopted as presented. Thank you all. We are now moving on to the approval of the board minutes and also our financial reports and expenditures. First up, we have the Rails board meeting minutes of November 22nd, 2019. May I have a motion for approval of the minutes of November 22nd, 2019. Oops, we have the, yes. Yes, that's correct. May I have a motion to approve them as submitted?
So moved.
I think Hallie, and then we'll Scott for a second. Any comments, corrections, or additions? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? The minutes are approved as presented. Thank you all. We are moving right along to the Rails financial report, and Jim Krieger will be delivering that. Hello, Jim.
Hello. Good afternoon. The financial report is, we submitted some financial reports for both the November and December periods. I'll concentrate on talking about where we were at the end of December. The big news during the holidays is the money that came in. We received our last 3 payments.
Yay.
Due from fiscal year 19, which amounted to $3,217,500. And this completed our fiscal year 19 funding. And then not too long afterwards, we received, this is in January, and so it's not on the December financials, but we received a payment of $1,614,386. And that was the general fund portion of the fiscal year 20 grant. So through January 9th, we have now received 35.6% of our fiscal year 2020 funding. And by the way, the last 2 payments for fiscal year 19 Both arrived approximately 2 months before the similar payments from the prior year. So the payment history is accelerating a bit, much to our delight. So so as of the end of December, we were up to our coverage was up to 18 months of operations, which is a goal that the board had established several years ago, and which hadn't been met, I think, until now. Is the first time. And then next month's coverage will be around a month above, or about a month above that. And then we'll see as we get hopefully more fiscal year 2020 payments. So our revenues through December now, we're with the receipt of the APC payments, we're slightly above budget from higher grant revenues. Our income from reimbursements was down, but that's because our expenditures on reimbursements were down, so that didn't make any difference on our bottom line. Interest income has continued to decline as the interest rates have declined to about 1.7 and 1.8% at our accounts. All indications, everything I'm reading now is that should be pretty stable for quite some time now. The Fed raised interest rates in 2019 and the early part, and then had a couple quarters of declining, and from what I'm reading, they have it about to where they want it now. And then having another $3 to $4 million in our cash balances will help our investment income. Our expenditures through December were $586,000 below budget. Much of that is contractual services and personnel and library materials, but that was the reimbursements, and that doesn't really have a bottom line effect. And we're also favorable in 6 other expenditure categories from $14,000 to $23,000. So overall, we're doing quite well, and there's no real change in the trends from what I presented in October. And let's see. And we have now filled all of our vacancies that we had. Our personnel expenditures, salaries had been under budget. We had 3 vacant positions to fill at the beginning of the year. We added 1 more with the associate director, and we have now filled all of those positions. And our special revenue fund expenditures, that's the fund where we account for our grants, the major 2 ones being the L2 redevelopment, and now the census grant is starting to have some activity, but it's still, our expenditures are only $46,000, but we'll see that will pick up from now on. Our capital expenditures are pretty much completed for the year unless we end up with something unbudgeted, but I'm not aware of anything. So that's pretty much it. I answer any questions?
Any questions for Jim? If not, sir, your report will be filed for audit.
Okay. And we move on now to the approval of the November and December expenditures. They are listed at the end of each financial report respectively. The November expenditures were $832,807.58, and the December expenditures were $841,144.54. Are there any questions on the details of these that I can answer?
Any questions for Jim? If not, may I have a motion for approval of the check voucher register for both November and December of 2019?
So moved.
Thank you, Gwen. Thank you, Dave. We have a motion and a second on the floor. Are there any other questions for Jim? If not, Emily, may I have a roll call vote, please?
Sure. Dave Barry.
Yes.
Sue Busenbark.
Yes.
Michael Campbell.
Yes.
Ellie Cox.
Yes.
Gwen Gregory.
Yes.
Percy Harris.
Yes.
Diane Hollister.
Yes.
Sarah McCone Chase.
Yes.
Paul Mills.
Yes.
Jenna Namek Luisi.
Yes.
Scott Poynton.
Yes.
Nadia Shay.
Yes.
So,
Thomas Stagg.
Yes.
all right. Thank you, Jim. All right, well, we are moving along to reports, and the first one we have is 7.1, report from the Rails president, which would be me. I have a report, but that actually falls under the consortia committee report, so nothing beyond that to report at this time. So we move along to our committees, and the first one we have is the advocacy committee. Michael, do you have a report, sir?
I do. We met today, and we were fortunate enough to have Gwen and Sarah report on academic libraries, and they did a great job of talking about academic libraries to us today, so thank you for that, as well as coming up with some good ideas on some ways that Rails could possibly do maybe some internships or some ways that we could do that. So Gwen is going to work with Dee on possibly seeing if we could implement that and see if that's actually feasible. As well as next month we are starting the legislative advocacy meeting. So we're kind of spreading out at different advocacy meetings across the Rails area. So we'll be going to different ones across that. And then for the month of March, Percy has agreed to talk about ILA and trustees for us. So that is our report. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. That's wonderful. And thank you, Percy, for, I'm familiar with that term. It's a great term.
We'll forward your, the report from Gwen and
Oh.
Sarah to the whole board too. It's
Great.
very
Good, too.
interesting and important.
Thank you, Deirdre. Thank you, Gwen. All right, well, next report is the Consortia Committee, which is me. The Consortia Committee did meet this Monday. Monday seems like a very long time ago. It was a very good meeting. Two items I would like to highlight. We had a presentation from Aaron Skog, who is the Executive Director of SWAN, one of the consortia that Rails supports. They had undertaken a project in calendar year 2019, a clarity report to discuss their consortium and ways they can move it forward to make it an even better organization to serve all their patrons. I would encourage you to read the report if you have the opportunity. I thought it was an excellent analysis, including research methodology for how they achieve their conclusions. So it's a good document. I encourage you to read it. The other item is that we had a presentation from Ann Slaughter regarding a proposed new funding formula for consortia such as SWAN that Rails provides significant financial report for FY 2022. We're in 2020 now, got to keep our years straight. We had a really good conversation there about some of the data points and the data analysis that Rails is looking to incorporate. They anticipate having a final proposal for the committee to review at our April meeting. So it's a fun committee, like it quite a bit. Actually, Scott Poynton actually serves on the committee as a Pinnacle representative, and we also have Tom serves on the committee as well. So I don't know, Scott, Tom, if there's anything you'd like to add about the committee's meeting?
Learned a new word, quartile.
Quartile, yes.
No, I'm good.
Okay, all right. Well, all right, thank you all. Next committee is Executive Committee. We did not meet, so that makes for a very quick report. However, I do believe Gwen has something to talk about with the Policy Committee.
Well, sure, the Policy Committee has been meeting, as you know, and later on the agenda, we have our big item, which is the employee handbook, but we will talk about that under number 8.
That almost sounded like music from a horror film for a minute there, but which is no foreshadowing at all. I wouldn't assume. Thank you, Gwen. Next, we have the Resource Sharing Committee, and Deirdre is our.
They have not met.
That makes that for an easy conversation. Finally, that takes us to the Universal Service Committee.
We met November 26th at Burr Ridge. There was a good discussion about the survey that was presented to the directors throughout Rails. I believe it was around 200 and some that responded to the survey, and that survey, I'm not sure if board members were able to access the survey or not, but it was on, Grant had put that up. So that would be something interesting for you to look at if you haven't had a chance to look at it. There's summaries in the packet. In Dee's report, there's a summary of the Universal Service meeting. It's on page 3 of her report, and there's also in the half-year executive director's report, goal 13, there's a summary of that. We discussed, like I said, we discussed survey questions. There was discussion about little free libraries that the Joliet area is, I believe it's in place, isn't it, Dee?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Yes, and it's like a offshoot of the former Bookmobile. There was a lot of talk about library cards for unserved students and teachers, but nothing has really been finalized at this point. Dee, do you want to add?
Sure. We're working on a new web page that's going to be, or a reorganization of our web pages that will make it easier to find information about the unserved/universal service. And I think it might include a link to at least part of the survey. It's a very long survey that Sue was referencing. Very useful in terms of what libraries are doing to try to serve the unserved, which, as you said, I wrote about it a couple different times. So and it's going to be an agenda item next month. So I don't want to go into too much detail, but we did have a really good conversation at that meeting, as Sue said, and came up with a number of possible ideas. You're on the committee, Dave. I thought the discussion of cards for kids, for unserved kids, for teachers, temporary cards, I thought that was all really positive, and the state library was even, very willing to look at it.
Yes, I agree with you, and this is such a complex issue.
Yes.
With almost each area of the state, and each area within has a different reason for being unserved. So this will take some time to address.
Right. So I think between Sue's report and what I've written to you, and then the report next month, I think you'll get a good flavor. And I hope by then, next month also, to have some more information. We're also working on, and Joe is very involved in this, is a new FAQ that will be on the State Library website, Heartland and ours, about what the rules and the laws are, because there's so much confusion. That was one thing that the survey revealed, and we were not surprised to hear that, but it was even more widespread confusion than we had thought. So there's a lot going on. We'll update you very fully next month.
Thank you, Sue, Dave, and Deirdre. All right, well, we are continuing our reports. Move on to the Rails report, and actually, Deirdre, it is time for the Rails monthly report.
Yes. Okay. Let's see. So I talk about delivery on the first page of my report. That is also going to be a topic next month, because we've been doing a lot of studies. Well, our colleagues that our contracted colleagues have, both LASA and Greg Pronovich. LASA looks at the sort of routing, driving around side. Greg has been looking at the library side, with things that we can do to help to make the process better for libraries, how the libraries, process things internally that affect our delivery ultimately. So he's working on a report. He was his first major task was to compare the cost of our current outsourced delivery, which is in this area, up in the old Wheeling area, and then out by Shorewood and Geneva. I think it's about 130 libraries. I'm sure Mark is listening and he's going to tell me that's wrong. But anyway, it's not a big part of the total number of libraries that is outsourced, but it's a huge part of the volume. So we wanted to see how, what the cost comparison was like. So we're still analyzing all of that. So we'll be reporting next month on that. Let's see. Our video is going to be launching just in time for the legislative meetups. Stars Nick Offerman, the famous Nick Offerman from Parks and Rec. Thank you very much, Lauren Offerman, Library Director at Three Rivers and sister of Nick Offerman. Then I wanted to just update you something that we just heard yesterday, which is that, I've been talking about Simply E at different times, which is the app that brings together e-content, sort of removes the vendor. It's vendor agnostic, I guess. It just brings together all of the e-book, e-audio collections that libraries have through this one app. Big barrier has been that they don't have Hoopla. It is not available through this app, nor was Overdrive audiobooks. But yesterday we saw on a Zoom meeting the signed agreement between New York Public Library and Overdrive, so that e-audiobooks are going to be available within 8 weeks. So I think that's going to make a big difference, and that libraries in Illinois will be much more interested in it, well, especially public libraries, in adopting it, I think.
Yeah, that's great news. Yeah, that is great news.
Yep. Yeah. And I think that's probably all I have to say. If anybody has any questions.
Any questions for Deirdre? If not, thank you again for your report, ma'am. Sure. We move on, continue with Rails reports for services of the month. Deirdre, would you like to introduce Amy?
Yes, so yes. Amy De La Fuente here in Burr Ridge. She has been with us since November 1st. We all thank our lucky stars every day, at least once, about that, because she's managing our census project. And so Amy is going to give you a report of where we are with that.
Okay. So we are 74 days out from the census, and that's just a timestamp on when everybody should be thinking about responding to the census, where they're at or where they plan to be on the 1st of April. And I know that I talked to all of you at the last board meeting, but since then, we've had some exciting things happen. We have had our contract signed by the state, so that was a big relief. We currently are working with 23 subrecipients, and 19 of them are libraries. And we also have a few social service agencies and a few nonprofit organizations. I'm trying to, since we still have a little bit of funding left for contractual services, I'm trying to see if there are 3 interested libraries, if we could help them achieve their GATA compliance and support them with any information they need to have strong applications and budget items in order to effectively implement the census. So since we now have our contract signed and things are moving along, We just had a kind of a kickoff meeting, well, 2 mini kickoff meetings at the beginning of this month due to the holidays. We wanted to accommodate all of our subrecipients, and we did that through holding 2 meetings that were basically the same format to get them information about upcoming reporting requirements, to have them have the opportunity to meet one another and talk about things that are on the horizon, such as biweekly conference calls with the subrecipients, future site visits, and then what the reporting process is that's required of the state, and then how they can submit information to Rails for reimbursement. So just lots of need to know information, a little bit dry, but necessary. So everybody has been submitting all of their documents. Some people need a little bit more support and technical assistance than others, but I think that's part of the of what you see with grants management is that some people are doing okay, and others you need to figure out how to best support them so they can put their best efforts forth. Like I mentioned before, we have a lot of thoughtful plans in terms of outreach for engagement. Everybody has been extremely responsive to the state's directives to focus on 6 hard-to-count populations, and so pretty much the next time this meeting rolls around, we'll have an entire month of active census work happening, from people going out to their local laundromats to do outreach with families with young children. Some other inspirational ideas that we're hoping to, or that subrecipients have stated they're going to do, is targeting seniors who are mall walking, right? So we have older adults as one of our hard-to-count populations. We also have plans for apartment outreach, so that's with some of our renters. We have promotores who are basically helping their community to inform residents about the census. So promotores are Spanish-speaking individuals, mostly women, who have relationships in their community and talk to residents about a variety of things. And so they're now going to help communicate about the importance of the census. So I also just want to mention that the majority of our subrecipients have really strong partnerships with local organizations, with like the League of Women Voters, with local schools and their local complete count committees. So it's really exciting to see how these subrecipients plan to kind of have this community effort, with the library being at the hub of their partnerships to implement this work. Lastly, Rails has been culling a lot of information, and they have created a census webpage so that people can find out resources and links that are available, so that they can share videos, they can share information about how to promote the census, targeting specific hard-to-count populations. And also, Rails has a listserv so that library directors can have conversations related to the census. They can post questions. They can just regularly communicate with one another about what they're doing in their libraries, or ask if anybody's doing other things. So we're hoping that as we get closer to the census, that we'll see more involvement on that listserv, and that it will serve as a valuable resource for all libraries, not just those who are participating as subrecipients or in the collar counties, but statewide, to feel like they have access to resources and an opportunity to talk to others. So we're hoping that that's a useful resource. And that's it for my report. If anybody has any specific questions, I'm happy to answer them for you to the best of my ability.
Thank you.
Anyone have any questions for Amy? Oh. Doesn't sound like it. Well, thank you. That's a thorough report then, Amy. There's no
Okay.
question. So thank you, Amy.
Great, thank you.
All right, well, we are moving on to the Illinois State Library report, and I believe Gwen will be delivering that report for us.
Well, it'll be short but mighty. I talked to Greg and he asked that I relay to you that, of course, annual certification opened January 2nd, and it appears that things are going very, very well. I met with both Rails representatives and Heartland yesterday, and our meetings continue to get shorter and shorter. It takes me longer to build the attachments than the host meeting. The meeting was all of 8 minutes. It's like a finely tuned machine. Our assistant brothers and sisters are doing a good job. Our librarians are cooperating, and I am very happy about this. So hopefully March 1st we'll get full compliance and be able to wrap this up. That ends my report. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
That's even shorter than the meeting you had.
Yeah.
Yes.
Any questions? No? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, well, we're moving on to new business. 8.1, introduction of Miss Monica Harris, which I will turn over to Deirdre.
Yes, Monica Harris is our new Associate Executive Director. We're very glad to have her here, and she's going to give a short 45-minute speech about background. Just kidding.
Hello. Good afternoon, all. Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm really pleased to be a part of Rails, and I wanted to thank all of the Rails team for doing a lot to onboard me over the last couple of weeks. Everybody's really giving me a really strong background in the history and practices and functions of Rails, and so it's been a really good learning experience for me. Just to let you know a little bit about myself and my background, I have almost 20 years in public libraries specifically, and most of my experience is in public libraries. I most recently came from the Schaumburg Township District Library, where I was the executive director. Schaumburg Township District Library serves a community of about 130,000 in suburban Chicagoland. Previous to that, I was also at the Oak Park Public Library, and before 2007, when I started there, I'm actually from Michigan Libraries originally. So I started out my career in Michigan. It's where I went to library school, and I worked in a mix of suburban Detroit public libraries there, and then also very small rural libraries in mid-Michigan. And so one of the reasons that I was very attracted to the work at Rails and the mission of what Rails does is because of the variety of libraries and services that they can support. Having come from very small libraries with nothing and still having a lot of friends who work in rural libraries in Michigan and do a lot of work there, really seeing how an organization can support those libraries and see that work is really, really close to my heart. So I was really pleased to be able to be a part of that. In addition to my public library work, I did also teach a class for 3 years through San Jose State University's iSchool in innovation and participatory practice in public, well, in all libraries actually. And so that was a really interesting experience and a chance for me to work with a lot of library school students who were going into special libraries and academic libraries and other spaces as well. And so to really see how they were using innovation and how they were thinking about innovating in libraries and moving that forward has been a really great addition to my career and my experience. So I'm very pleased to be here. Thank you very much for having me as part of your meeting.
Welcome, Monica.
Thank you.
If I may, I've actually had the pleasure of serving with Monica on the Libraries of Illinois Risk Agency Executive Committee, along with Jim Krieger, and Monica brings a tremendous level of professionalism and expertise, and Rails is very lucky to have you. So,
thank you, Paul.
Welcome, welcome. All right, so moving on to membership changes, and Dan Ostrom will be presenting. I know I saw Dan. There's Dan.
Okay, so we have 3 membership changes for you all, and we've just kind of lumped them together. The first one is a new member, that's Germantown Hills School District 69. That's a school district near Peoria. They actually found out about Rails membership because their librarian went to an ISLE meeting, the Association for Illinois School Library Educators, and they found out that if they could join Rails, they could be part of eRead Illinois, which is really cool. So, so that is Germantown Hills. Gerber Hart Library and Archives, they're a former Rails member. The board actually decided to voluntarily withdraw from membership a few years ago because they were just kind of going through some change of plans, and and they were no longer going to staff the library for 15 hours a week. But they've had some new people come in. They've decided that they want to regain membership, and they've kind of recommitted themselves to making the library open as much as possible. And then now they have a director. So that is Gerber Hart. And then the last one, I always hate to see these things, but we have to recommend suspension for United CUSD 304. This was brought to us actually by the Illinois State Library. They asked us to follow up to see if there was still a librarian working at the library district, or school district. We've called and emailed, and we just haven't gotten any response from them. So fortunately, this is the step that we have to take. Any questions about any of these that I can answer?
No. If no question, no, I'm sorry, Dave, please.
Well, I was going to make a motion to recommend those two libraries for membership to the state library. I think there should be a separate motion for the library to spend that, right?
Sure.
That would be, yeah, that'd be fine. So if I may, Dave, just so we get their full names in the record, would you like to make a motion to recommend to the state library the approval of Germantown Hills School District 69 and the Gerber Hart Library and Archives as new members?
That is correct. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Would someone like to second Dave's motion?
Second.
Thank you, Jenna. Is there any further comment on that motion? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? That motion is approved. Thank you, Dave. So my next question is, do we have a motion to approve the recommendation to suspend United CUSD 304?
So moved.
Thank you, Scott. Hallie will be our second. Is there any further conversation about this? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion is approved as well. Thank you, Dan. Thank you very much. All right. Next, we have the employee handbook, and Gwen Gregory, who as our vice president, also serves as chair of our policy committee, and I will turn this over to Gwen.
Thank you, Paul. So everyone got this huge document. You'll be happy to know that the policy committee spent hours already going through this, working with the Rails HR staff and with Deirdre, and getting questions answered by the lawyers and HR source. So we have done a pretty thorough review of it already. So we were hoping that all the other board members didn't feel like they had to do an exhaustive review of it as well. And this cover memo for it kind of describes the highlights of what was changed or what was added. Basically, the original policy manual or employee handbook from 2013 just needed to be updated and needed different parts added. Some things that we had already approved earlier that hadn't gotten into it because we hadn't redone the manual. And then just changing some of them to reflect current policy and practice and some kind of improvements to the HR policies of the organization. So I guess what we're looking for is an approval from the board, but is there any discussion or questions? Snow has started.
I'll make a motion to approve the revised
Second.
policy handbook.
The new employee handbook?
Right.
Scott's made a motion to accept the recommendation of the policy committee and adopt the new employee handbook. Do we have a second?
Second.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Sarah. I'd like to really thank Gwen and the policy committee. This is a tremendous amount of work. It's a very detailed, very serious document that's prepared, and they really deserve kudos for all the work you've put into that.
Well, thanks to the other members of the policy committee for showing up at the meetings and taking part in this. And we also have vacancies on the policy committee. But now we've done this, we've done all this big task, and there might not, you never know though.
I think it's appropriate to also thank the staff, because the staff did a tremendous amount of work on this.
Yes, and really developed it and then went back and changed it and checked things and made new drafts and.
Agreed. So we do have a motion and a second on the floor. Just any further comment? If not, actually, Emily, would you please, for the employee handbook, actually, would you do a roll call vote,
Sure.
please? Thank you.
Dave Barry.
Yes.
Sue Busenbark.
Yes.
Michael Campbell.
Yes.
Hallie Cox.
Yes.
Gwen Gregory.
Yes.
Percy Harris.
Yes.
Diane Hollister.
Yes.
Sarah McCone Chase.
Yes.
Paul Mills.
Yes.
Jonathan McLuise.
Yes.
Scott Poynton.
Yes.
Nadia Shape.
Yes.
Thomas Stagg.
Yes.
Thank you, Emily. And again, thank you, Gwen. Thank you to the policy committee, and thank you to the staff who put a tremendous amount of work into this. All right, moving along, we have a strategic plan progress report, and that again will be Deirdre.
Yes, thank you. This is a very long report. I want to just cast our minds back a bit to when we discussed my performance review last May, I think, or June, I guess. We talked about these reports, and you indicated that you liked them, you appreciated them, you read them, because I was concerned that that we were doing something that wasn't useful to you, because this does take time, a lot of time, and I think it could be done in a more lightweight manner, probably, but I think it is really important, and I know that you do too, that you understand what we're doing and why and how we're using tax dollars, and to the best that we can, how it impacts members. So, I'm not sure how you want to approach this. I guess last year what I did was I went at different meetings. You may remember this, those of you who were on the board last year. It's like being, over the course of 3 or 4 board meetings, we went through different sections of it, because it's just to kind of, focus on, whereas not spending like a whole bunch of time at one meeting. I think it keeps everybody fresher. We could do that. I'm interested in whether you think it's too long, if you think it's useful to do it. Anything you want to say to me or to us about it is would be very helpful. I'll just stop there for a bit.
I have a question.
Yes.
So if you mentioned doing it in a more lightweight fashion, what would you envision that might be? Because I'm considerate that, you're spending a lot of time creating this, for sure.
Right.
And
Sure.
maybe that time could be better spent.
Right, exactly. And actually, Monica and I had a question about that today. Had a conversation about that today, because you did you did it quarterly?
Plan of service update quarterly, yeah.
And you want to just say a little bit about what you said to me?
Sure. So, and this is just the way that we approached it for our own public library, was that there was a set of goals that was over a 3-year period, but that each quarter we really just highlighted the ones that were targeted and focused on for that quarter. And then from those individual pieces that had been updated, we created a 1-page sheet that also went out to staff so that they could see the most updated pieces. And as I explained to Dee, that there's not, that specific isn't necessarily something that would work for the Rails staff, because they're very involved in all of these pieces and are very aware of that, but it was really helpful from a standpoint of really honing and focusing in on what those projects were and how they had moved forward.
So, right. Thank you. So I think at the least we probably could adopt that approach in sort of creating a one, with Grant's help in particular, and an infographic or something based on everything we're doing. We could just be less detailed about it. We could do it more often so that it's, we could do it every, half a year, so it takes up less time. We could just find ways to, shorten it. I don't have, I think we have to talk about it internally. Mary and I were talking about it. We don't really have a good answer. But the main thing is that we want it to be useful to you. So if you like getting the report, that's good to know. If you think we should try to, lighten it up a little bit, that's good to know too. I'm just looking for sort of general
Feedback.
feedback. That's the
Yes.
word.
Yes.
I like the idea of having some type of a visual or an infographic that really kind of summarizes the highlights of whatever progress was made in a specific focus area. I know in other work that I've done with various strategic planning initiatives, we've articulated through infographics or through visuals what the actual strategic plan is, and then followed up with infographics that kind of complement that.
Okay.
That can eventually be synthesized together in one document. So you have this really lovely array of visuals that I think capture the energy and the momentum of it in a way that certainly a report like this captures. But I think that there's a certain energy and enthusiasm that comes from an infographic. And I do believe that there is the value of this detail. And I think that if you were going to consider making it less detailed, but also have it in this narrative form like this, it's something that could complement an infographic. And the infographic actually could perhaps direct people to various parts of the report so that they could kind of connect and get those additional details were people to want to read them.
Okay.
Deirdre, how much of this report would you say is replicated in the report that must be delivered to the Illinois State Library on an annual basis?
Not that much.
Not that much?
Yeah, I had that conversation with Mary, and Ann and Joe, would you agree? I mean, what you guys have to collect for the state library is there's a lot more. It's just a different set. I mean, they want to know information about the LSAPs, a lot of information. Okay. They want to know information about vehicles and mileage and a big HR component.
It's much more statistical.
It's much, it's not so much about what we do. It's about what we are, our sort of the organization, structure, et cetera.
Okay.
That's,
Okay.
I mean, it's certainly helpful to us too internally. I'm not trying to say that it isn't. So you don't have to. I mean, let us think about it internally. I just wanted to get your minds going about it a little bit because it did take a while. Do you think it's a good idea to spend the next couple meetings just going through specific pieces of it?
I do. That is useful for us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That was what we did last year, and I think it was very helpful. So anything you want to say about it today? You want me to talk about it today, or you want to talk about it starting next month? I can do either.
Anyone have any preferences?
I would prefer next one.
Okay.
I would agree with Dave.
All right, that's
that
good.
sounds great.
Let's get
Thank
that
you.
cane down the road.
Thank you. Thank you, Deirdre.
Of course.
All right, and continue with Deirdre, we have the Executive Director Goals Progress
Yet
Report.
another report, but this one is much shorter. There's a lot of overlap, obviously, with the, strategic plan. But my goals are more specific. If only I could find them now. Let's see, where are they? Here we go. So you remember probably that you approved these goals, I think in July. Maybe I'll just run through this pretty quick and you can ask me questions. This is helpful for me to do to be sure that I'm focused on what I'm supposed to be doing. It also, I'll tell you, it helps me write my annual self-evaluation, so I'm actually very happy to do this because now that's half done. I'll skip over the first one because obviously that's what we were just talking about in terms of the packet, and it's really, in terms of that report, and this is, as I said, there's a lot of overlap. Financial sustainability, we've been working a lot on that. You're going to hear a big report next month, particularly about delivery, which is obviously a big portion of our budget. Goal 3 at the bottom of page 1, we're kind of at a waiting point right now with standards. We accomplished a lot over the past year with the state library, with ILA, so that several of our standards, our key data points, put it that way, are going to be incorporated when certification is changed in 2021 next year. So I think we're in a good place right now with the standards. I think we have more work to be done with non-public libraries, but once I think we've accomplished a lot for this at this point. In terms of funding increases, we've submitted a proposal through ILA to increase the per capita grant for public and school libraries, and to appropriate new additional funding for statewide database access. We hope that will be in the governor's budget. Greg McCormick, he's optimistic, so if he's optimistic, I am too. So we're waiting to hear on that.
Deirdre, when do you think we might know something on that?
February, when the governor's budget comes out, I hope. So soon.
Yeah.
Let's see, what else? You're going to hear about delivery. I keep talking about that. We're going to tell you later, Joe and I, about what we've been doing about the minimum wage. See, equity, diversity, inclusion at the top of page 4. We just started, we're starting to work internally on this. We're going to be working with our staff on this whole topic, starting with the issue of implicit bias, and Joe is spearheading finding a speaker or a trainer or an expert to sort of help us figure out how to put equity and diversity inclusion, insert it into everything we do on a regular basis, so that we can then, once we have our house in order, we will be better poised to help our members. Let's see, we're continuing to work on Explore More and Find More. Told you about Simply E, told you about Universal Services. I think we'll have a good report on that next month. So I think I feel like I'm making progress. I feel like I've made the least progress on equity, diversity, and inclusion, but I think things are going to ramp up there. So, any questions?
Any questions for Deirdre? Not the comment I make. I think Deirdre, you always set actually impressive goals for yourself, and actually I'm always very impressed by how well you accomplish them, ma'am.
Mm-hmm. You guys are slave drivers.
All right. So moving along, we have the budget amendment. Budget amendment regarding the census grant, and Mr. Krieger will be joining us again.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We're requesting board approval to amend our budget, primarily the special revenue fund, which receives grants. As in October, well after our budget had been prepared, we were awarded the census grant in the amount to be up to $750,000. And so we'll be recording expenses in the special revenue fund, and it would be a good idea to have a budget to record them against, so we can measure our progress and see where we're at with that.
Such a stick.
And it's a major, it's certainly a major change in the special revenue fund. So what we would do is you would approve my sending a request to the state library to accept an amendment to our budget. This is something that is typical in governmental accounting if you have major changes in your operations or grant structure. So in the materials is the details of the budget, which has been approved by IDHR. Have any questions?
Anyone have any questions for Jim? No? If not, may I have a motion to approve the budget amendment as described by Mr. Krieger?
So moved.
Thank you, Sarah. Dave is our second. Any further conversations about this? If not, Emily, this is money. Can we do a roll call vote, please? Thank you.
Dave Barry,
Yes.
Sue Busenbark,
Yes.
Michael Campbell,
Yes.
Haley Cox.
Yes.
Gwen Gregory,
Yes.
Percy Harris,
Yes.
Diane Hollister,
Yes.
Sarah McCone Chase. Yes. Paul Mills,
Yes.
Jenna Namek Louisi,
Yes.
Scott Poynton,
Yes.
Nadia Shake,
Yes.
Thomas Stack.
Yes.
Thank you, Jim. All right, we move on to unfinished business on delivery study update, which actually Deirdre had talked a little bit about, but Deirdre?
If it would be okay with the board, I think we'll just table this for now. Mark is ill. He's here, but he's not feeling well. And since we're going to talk about delivery next month, this was going to be about the delivery satisfaction survey, which I can tell you that people are very satisfied. So that's the main thing. We were going to say more about that in conjunction with the studies that we've done, but I think we could just do all that next month. It makes more sense.
We get a motion table?
I don't know, do we?
It's a report, so I'm
Right, it
fairly
is just a
fine, yeah.
report, you're right.
No action was expected,
Right.
so that sounds fine, Deirdre.
Okay.
Thank you. That's always a fascinating topic, so I'm looking forward to that next
Yes,
month.
I think it'll make more sense.
All right, we are in double digits on our agenda. We're up to 10 in board development, new minimum wage, and what Rails is doing to help members, and that would be Deirdre and Joe.
You gonna come up here, Joe?
Sure.
Oh, you're excited. Let's see. Rush over here. Just a little. Oh. Yeah, bring a chair.
Pardon me, sir.
You don't tower over us. So we know this is a big topic for the board and for all of our libraries. Although there's been less, at least overt concern, wouldn't you say?
I think so,
As
yeah.
people have sort of
The initial.
looked at their budgets and their salaries, et cetera. But we still wanted to tell you some of the things that we're doing. So we do have a Pulse page right on our website. I was looking at it before. That does outline all the things that we've done and give some just a lot of different information on it.
And a copy of that's in their packet.
Oh, good,
Right, yeah,
okay.
Or they received that.
Yes, we did send you a document too, and it's also posted, that lays out, it looks like this, that lays out the, what the actual, changes, when they take effect, what the rates are, some frequently asked questions, and just, different, and then a synopsis of what Rails is doing, which includes training, and this webpage, obviously. So that's what we've done since this, and we've had different conversations with members. We had a member update conversation that Diane Foote was at too, because this is, obviously it was a legislative issue, so ILA was involved. And we also provide some talking points to explain why libraries need more money to be able to deal most effectively with increases in the minimum wage. So Joe's going to talk about more specific training.
Yeah, in terms of what Rails can do to help members, I know some of our members would just prefer we cut them a check, I think, to help them cover that financial burden for some perhaps of being in compliance with the minimum wage over the years. But short of that, we are offering some training opportunities as well as some resources. So just going back a few months ago, we kind of started by bringing in HR Source, both an attorney and one of their compensation specialists, to talk about both, kind of the minimum wage increase 101, understanding the sort of time frame and other components of it, and then really talking about how you have to adjust your your salary schedule, your pay grades to adapt to it, and some of those sort of particulars. That was in the fall, and there were about 100 members that participated in that and had a lot of good questions. That was very helpful for them. So going forward, a few things. So former board members Kathy Parker and Kate Hall, beginning next month, are going to be doing a series over the year, over 2020, quarterly sort of director, and for both directors and assistant directors, meetups, where they will focus on it the Director's Essential series. It'll kick off in February. They will offer in different locations, but also use video conferencing. But the first in the series will deal with finances, and they are a component of that session in February, is going to talk about the minimum wage and sort of how to approach it from a budgeting standpoint. Some of you might also know Jamie Racklin, who's from Meristem Advisors. He's has a long history of really helping libraries, both providing training, but then also as a financial advisor. He has really kind of dug into the minimum wage and sort of finding ways to help libraries. And one thing that he has created is, we just kind of call it the spreadsheet. It should probably have a word at some point, but basically we really wanted something to be able to put in the hands of members, some kind of tool or resource. So he created a spreadsheet basically as a kind of budget planning document that allows staff to sort of put in staff members by the sort of range they fall in, what they're making, and it sort of projects out over the years what sort of tweaking, taking various sort of factors into account within the spreadsheet, what they need to do, what they need to adjust to get everyone to line up and to be in compliance with the minimum wage. So in the spring, now that he's kind of has a fully adapted and tweaked, we're going to have him do at least a few webinars where he will talk about how members can use this tool, what its purpose is. We don't want to just forward it to everyone and say, here's a spreadsheet, good luck. It isn't an answer to everything, but it's a tool. So he will explain how to use it. And then for those people that attend, they'll be able to get their hands on that resource, which I think will be very helpful for them. Otherwise, Directors University, which we'll offer in June, we're talking even last year about incorporating that into the curriculum for this year. Obviously, a lot of new directors, some who will be the first week on the job, and making sure that they understand the minimum wage and the impact perhaps for their library. We continue to have a great partnership with HR Source, who has been a great resource for libraries in turn on planning for the minimum wage, the HR hotline. We still have our discount membership program with HR Source that has enabled about 50 member libraries to join and then have access to that HR hotline and to their compensation specialists to help them plan for this. Finally, I'll just say sort of anecdotally, I think one of the positive, maybe unintended impacts of this is that we have a certain number of members that had no concept of like having a salary schedule or pay grades. They didn't know that was even necessarily a thing. And so when they sat in on that HR Source webinar where that was talked about, they realized maybe this is something that I need to do. And so getting examples of what that looks like to help them in planning for it, I think has been one of the positive effects of this in a way. But certainly moving forward as other aspects of this, perhaps something like fundraising as a related topic. What are other strategies that libraries may need to adopt in terms of fundraising to help kind of comply with this? So
and advocacy, obviously.
It's spoken to there a little bit, but yeah, we can certainly do more. So those are some things that we have planned in the months ahead. So
and I think as time goes on, I think that the whole issue of salary compression is going to become a bigger issue, because libraries can meet they meet that first level and they think, oh, okay, great. And then they get to the next one. And then all of a sudden they're seeing this happen. So I think the questions and the concerns are going to change.
Yeah, and that's another one where the compensation specialists at
Right.
HR Source really have a lot of experience
Right.
In the topic generally, but then obviously they work with so many public libraries, so many libraries across the state that they really know our situation and scenarios. So,
And of course, we really hope to get some more funding for libraries because that'll make things a lot easier.
yes, like the per capita funding and
Yep.
so forth. Yep.
I have a question rolled into a comment or vice versa. I think all that's wonderful. A lot of that is consulting and getting head type things, helping libraries do what they should be doing.
Right.
With what they're given. But that's the problem I would like to work on,
Right.
what they're given. And I
Exactly.
totally appreciate that per capita thing that we're doing. But from a tax capped, public library perspective, we live and die on the CPI. And the reason why I know my library, which I consider to be underfunded, isn't screaming bloody murder about the two increases that have already happened is because we had that sweet 2.1% CPI last year compared to just a few years ago, it was 0.7%. So it tripled from one year to the next.
Yep.
But now the Fed and the president pressuring the Fed to keep lowering interest rates, which is causing, I've yet to peel this onion far enough to know who the they is in Illinois.
Yeah,
They
right.
determine CPI, but is there any way that, how I think, like I can plead to Rails and Rails can plead to the state library and the state library can plead to Jesse White, who can plead to whoever the they is, to keep in mind tax funded agencies and in tax cap counties, I should say, that the CPI at the same time, it's going down. They went from 2.1 to 1.9. I didn't check yet. Every January you can find out. I didn't call yet, but it looks like it's trending downward. And as it goes down, as our minimum wage costs are going up, that's a bad formula for us.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, and we will certainly, we'll have to look at that. And
But
I think Gwen is writing it down too, so we'll have to.
One of the things that Gwen and I were talking about at the advocacy meeting is that for small libraries, this becomes even a bigger issue because of that issue, because we gamed it out, and like by 2025, our budget can no longer. I mean, we're not sustainable, at that level,
right?
Because of that, because it becomes even more unsustainable for us. Because if you look at the things like you were talking about, you start compressing the salaries.
You can't have the pages earning the same as the librarians. I mean, there has to be a spread there.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
So you start doing all this, and you start, building those spreadsheets in there, and it all starts, compressing in there. And so then you start looking at, okay, what do you do at that point? If you can't raise taxes, and you can't, and I mean, what we were talking about is that librarians are already underpaid.
Right.
So, I can't hire an executive librarian for $45,000. It's just not, it's not going to happen, And so, that, that becomes a strategy that we have to address, and we have to start talking about those kinds of issues.
Yep.
It's
Absolutely.
But I know none of us are saying anything that you all haven't thought of.
No, that's okay. No,
But what I'm fearing and what I'm seeing is it's leading to a deprofessionalization of the field.
Agreed.
Because as libraries get
Agreed.
pinched, whether they're school libraries or public libraries or whatever, the powers that be are turning to paraprofessionals instead of hiring librarians, and
That's true.
It's a scary trend.
Yep. Yeah, it's definitely an advocacy opportunity, an advocacy must, but it's difficult. But we have to do it, and I think as time goes on, the evidence, unless we get this new money, which who knows how much we'll get, and
Sure.
It's not going to solve everything, but,
Certainly a lot.
there's going to be a lot of evidence to prove these bad things, which you don't want to have this evidence, but.
That's a point you can bring up at the legislative later, meeting.
Yeah, right.
Sure.
Next month.
Timing is-
Kind of like, just to lay the groundwork for it, kind of like.
Yep. Yeah, right. We have to keep talking about it and have a whole plan. Yeah.
Well, so, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I have a great relationship we have 2 state senators and 3 state reps that my area touches, or they touch my area, or whatever. And I was saying this to them before the minimum wage law was increased, and saying like, please remember us, like think about what you're doing to us too. And they were like, it's too important, we'll figure you out later, but this is too important, we have to go forward with it.
Well, yeah, you have to hold them to that, right?
Yeah.
Good luck, yeah.
So we're just kind of caught in the crossfire here.
Okay, so this is really good, but I also wanted to point out that in the city of Chicago, the minimum wage is $13 an hour, and it's going up to $15 an hour in July 2021. So for this to be helpful for libraries in Chicago, it might be good to also include that information to incorporate that. That wouldn't
That's
be
a good idea.
public libraries, because there's no Rails members public libraries, but there's a lot of other libraries that it might apply to.
Yep, you're right. Thank you for that point. That's a really good point. And it doesn't just obviously affect public libraries any more than it just affects libraries, so.
Although you might be interested to know that as a state institution, we do not have to follow the City of Chicago minimum wage law, because the state employees, even though
Too
we're in
bad.
Chicago.
Yeah.
How do you guys student workers still want to come work for you then?
Because it's convenient and easy, I suppose. I'm not sure we'd lose some, but there's advantages to working at the library instead of working at, Chick-fil-A.
Yeah, I mean, I've written up
Sure.
like that for our library, to try to entice student workers, but I think it's going to get harder.
But no, our student workers make below the Chicago minimum wage.
Oh.
Other questions?
Any other questions for Joe and Deirdre? No? Thank you both.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Joe.
All right, well, we are on continuing reports. We're on Rails board member reports. This is an opportunity for anyone, here in Burr Ridge or in East Peoria or on Zoom. Anything going on at your library that you would like to share? Glenn,
Sure.
please.
So next week and the following week, we are having interviews at our library for our new dean of the library.
Mhm.
And so they actually just announced today who the candidates
Ooh.
are. So
wow.
Very exciting.
I can tell you, or I can tell you separately if you want to know. It is not anyone from Illinois.
Okay.
Okay.
So, I mean, that you might still know them, but it's not anyone that we know from Illinois. They could have worked in Illinois before. So we're all very excited about that, to see who our next dean of the library will be.
Thank you, Glenn.
Great. That's a big job. Illinois, yep.
We opened bids yesterday for a roofing project. We're gonna re-roof one of our library facilities. January is a good time to bid roofs apparently, because the low bid was $50,000 less than we predicted it would be, so it was a good day yesterday.
Good.
Yeah.
They're not going to do the roof in January, are they?
No, we're gonna do it this summer.
Okay.
Well, I will, no, please, Jenna.
I'm delighted to share that I will be on the spring 2020 ALA ballot for the position of chair of the independent school section of the American Association of School Librarians. And I think it's a tremendous opportunity to be working for me to be working as a practitioner at the local level, to be involved with Rails, and also to be able to get a national perspective on what's going on with independent schools throughout the country. And I think that can balance the efforts that we are doing
with our Rails work very, very nicely, as well as unlocking the potential for independent school librarians to really be at the helm of the positive change that we need to see in terms of advocacy work. So if you'll be at Midwinter next week, shameless self-advertisement, I will be giving a speech at the AASL Candidates Forum on Saturday evening at 4:30. It'll be in the Convention Center. I'd appreciate seeing friendly faces, even if you are not a voting member of AASL. And if not,
when is it?
Saturday evening at 4:30.
Okay.
I don't have the conference room number, but I will be there with all of the AASL candidates giving my brief speech. So I'm excited about the opportunity and what it can bring to the work that we do here as a group.
Oh, awesome.
Can you refresh your memories when the election is?
I think I don't remember when the voting opens.
April,
It's usually
around
Yeah,
April.
it's usually like late March and goes through for several weeks. But yeah.
Please remind us in March then.
I will.
I'm also
Thank
on the
you.
ballot, but I don't think it's for anything nearly as prestigious.
What are you on the ballot?
Chair-elect of Russo Stars.
Nice.
Congratulations.
Oh,
I think you're on the ballot, Monica.
Lovely.
Yeah, just for ALA Council.
Wow, all right.
I'm also going to be on the ballot for the ILA board coming up this spring, so.
Wow.
just look out for me.
You're just,
Look out for me.
yeah.
Well, it's quite an election season for us here.
I know.
Wow.
Very exciting.
I will share, this is actually the 50th anniversary of the Fountaindale Public Library District.
Wow.
We are kicking off our big first public event is this Saturday, the Winter Carnival. It looks like we're gonna get some winter weather to go with it.
As in tomorrow, Saturday?
Tomorrow,
Yay.
yes.
Oh, wow,
Yes.
okay.
One of our big events is we did a contest to design library cards with our community. So we'll be presenting winners in the adult, teen, and children's category. So that'll be a lot of fun and other exciting winter activities.
Cool.
Northern Illinois University is celebrating their 125th anniversary.
Wow.
This whole year. So we're going to have an array of exhibits, and there's going to be a lot of programming at the university level.
That's wow, 125.
125 years of Northern Illinois University.
Wow.
Great.
That is
No, there'll be a
wonderful.
lot of stuff on our website, the university's website, if anyone's ever interested in seeing just like what's going on there. But I'm anticipating a lot of pictures, basically, of 125 years ago. So I'm
Nice.
excited about that.
Yeah.
Lots of good news. Anything else?
I'm gonna be busy the next couple months. Everything packs into small spaces. I'm gonna be teaching 2 courses at the Illinois Judicial Education Conference. I'm working with self-represented litigants, the judges. So that's exciting for me. I've never done that before. And it's actually a 2-session. They have 1 session in February, another one in April. So that'll be interesting for me to get out there and be able to expose law libraries and libraries in general to the judges in the court system at a statewide level. So I'm excited about that. And then also I've been asked to speak at the Self-Represented Litigation Network in Nashville on the Illinois Program for Self-Represented Litigant Coordinators. So I'm going to be on a panel for that, talking what Illinois is doing to help coordinate self-represented litigant. That's such a mouthful.
Yeah, it is. I was just thinking that.
Efforts. And then AA Up, which is the American Association of Law Libraries, just reached out to me and they want me to help them out with their leadership conference in Oak Brook in March to help coach. They're adding a new component. They want to help coach this new component, which they've not fully disclosed to me yet, but so we'll see. So I'm going to be pretty busy. And then amongst all that, we have our Boy Scout Law Merit Badge Day coming up in March, which is always super fun, but very time intensive.
Exciting.
Well, so one other thing we're having at the University of Illinois at Chicago Library is on February 8th, we have, they call it, this is a kind of not a very good name, the History Palooza, where all the
I like it.
history fair students come to the UIC library on
That's
Saturday,
awesome.
and there'll be like hundreds of them. And we have like all extra librarians who aren't usually there on Saturday come to help them all work on their history fair projects.
When's that again, Glenn?
February 8th.
Great.
fun.
Yeah.
I've never heard of a history fair. I like.
No, that's for, I know, that's,
The Metro History Fair.
We have
So
a history
great.
fair.
Oh, do you?
no,
As a history major.
I-
That
history
appeals to
major
me.
myself.
Yeah.
I didn't have that when I was in college
No?
or high school.
It's really fun.
Awesome. All right, well, I think we can move on to agenda building for our next board meeting, which will be Friday, February 21st, here in Burr Ridge. We'll have a universal service progress report. We will have Miguel from the ALA Center for the Future of Libraries, the delivery report that Deirdre talked about earlier. Any other items for the agenda for February?
Will there be any report on ALA, like people that went to Midwinter, anything?
Yes, there will be. Thank you very much.
Just after that week, actually, that following week is actually also the Public Library Association
right.
conference.
Is it that, was it before the meeting or after?
It'll be after, yeah. Busy end of February.
Yeah, it's early this year.
All right, well, with no further business to bring before the board, I adjourn this meeting at 2:20 PM. Thank you all and safe drive home, because theoretically we might have some snow tonight.
True.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.